Welcome to the last installment from the International Cannabis Business Conference. This is on best practices as well as genetics and the little nuggets that I learned that I think might be interesting to you. So in terms of best practices for testing, it was pretty interesting. There was someone from Canada who does international export, and they said there are 17 different pharmacopoeias that they can test to or have to test to. What that means, a pharmacopoeia is exactly what you're supposed to do for a country to say that this is safe cannabis. And for most products, there's one pharmacopoeia. The whole world agrees this is what a safe product means. That is not true for cannabis. There are 17 different ones that this one testing analysis company has to know how to work with. And it's just a crazy way to do it. And it's a result of all the fragmentation of the market. On the flip side, you have the Netherlands, which all of that coffee shop cannabis that you have is not tested at all. In fact, it is illegal to test it under their regime. They've now starting to do like little pilot programs of actual legal cannabis from seed to sale. But for all these last 20 years, everything you got in the Netherlands is simply untested. You have no idea what's in it. And so these analysis people on the panel were talking about how it's constantly changing what they have to test for shipping internationally to all of these different countries, and it's very fluid, and it can be things like inhalation on heavy metals, pesticides, how you do irradiation. And they say what that really means is instead of best practices, it turns into best workarounds. You're just trying to do it in a way that'll make it meet the paperwork, and that's not what you want out of these systems. And the idea of the world being able to come together and having one good testing regime would be a lot better. As one panelist said, we need THC, trust, honesty, and cooperation. I thought that was pretty sweet. Then on the genetic side, unsurprisingly, all over the world, the people talking about growing cannabis said high THC still drives the market. Somebody talked about doing a pheno hunt, which is where you take a bunch of seeds and you just let them grow and see if you get anything interesting. And the person said this was some of those beautiful cannabis I'd ever seen in my life, but only tested at 19% THC and just had to throw it away because that's just not high enough to meet the demand of the market. Speaking of pheno hunting, they also said that pheno hunting is a lottery that you don't always win. There's a lot of sexiness around the idea of searching for great phenotypes, but it takes a lot of work to call through maybe 300 different plants and find one that you might be the one that you clone into a giant operation, but that it is not any guarantee. And the last thing that I learned is, if you've ever heard of the hop latent viroid, which is a virus type disease that often decimates crops. It's a big problem all over the U.S. in big parts of the world. And unfortunately, what happens is that it might take your 30% THC cannabis down to 10%, and it might be 8 weeks before you realize that this happened. And it's very hard to get rid of this viroid. It's as easy to transfer as the scissors you use can transfer it from plant to plant. And so it turns out that viroid actually comes through seeds, which makes it even harder to get rid of because often growers are buying seeds. And one of the things you can do to protect yourself from that is called tissue culture. And you might have heard of this. It's a big deal. So instead of having seeds, you take your mother plants and you make them down into just their tissue, and that tissue, and you clean it to make sure that there's nothing in there but the tissue that you can still clone back into a plant. So just in case your mother plants get infected with this hop latent viroid, and you might have to destroy all of them, and then you're stuck. For these companies that are trying to get to the next level, they want to have tissue culture backups, and it is not an easy thing to do, but it can be really important as cannabis gets to the next level of medical quality that is reproducible. So that is the updates on practice and genetics from International Cannabis Business Conference. And I'm Lex Pelger, and I'm going to go enjoy my hard-earned doner kebab. Lots of love from Berlin.